Are you looking for an editor? I actually do free critiques and readings for your story every single Saturday on my live stream.
My name is sacred. I am Butternut. You want to minimize the chance of a reader being pulled out of the story and being like, wait, what's going on? Forget dropping to the drop zone. I'm dropping you guys now, but drop or die. I would go harder in on the language that you use when describing the technology, the mech, the air units. In a maze of unending grid-laid streets with no avenue of exit in sight, when I wake up from dreaming, sometimes I wake up silently screaming. Add or adjust some of the language so it matches Boschian landscape, mirror world, shadowland.
Or if you're looking to hire an editor for your next book because you're ready to take it to the next level, I do full editing services where we'll focus on character.
The man froze for a moment, then nodded. Wolf, me, Wolf. I want to know more about each of the characters. Wolf makes me suspect that he's either father, the pirate, the evil antagonist, like the capricious nature of life's tapestry. You want to highlight and elevate that relationship between the two of you, that meeting moment.
World building.
I want more of this. Rhyming tone is music to the ears. I saw you're dead inside. That something happened I never knew about. And all those lies, loneliness, and us having to cope with it, relate to it, understand it, or fight against it is a very powerful message.
Dialogue.
He was surprised that this woman of all people was giving him a pep talk, because sometimes when we have characters who speak too much, it's easy for someone to tune out if they're reading it. And this is a really interesting world, and I don't want people to tune out on your work.
And structure.
Ben jumped up a little disoriented and grabbed his gun. Running to the stairs, he heard men yelling, "Who else is down there?" During this shootout, I would just add a little more detail, make this a little longer, because this shootout is fun. This is like the action sequence of like, kill the bad guy, pow pow.
So that way your book will be all ready to be published. And let's take it to market. Welcome to the Story and Critique Show, a first-of-a-kind live writing workshop where writers in the community will submit their stories for live readings and critiques. This is an experience that you don't want to miss out on. Today, we have quite a range of stories between some fantasy, some thriller, and some other genres in between. We have both some short stories, novel excerpts, and a script as well. So make sure that if you want your story read today, to send an excerpt down to the email listed below. Welcome to the stream. I'm your host, Kauffman, and I'm on a mission to show the world that the entire process of creative writing can be fun. Whether that's writing, editing, brainstorming, publishing, or the whole shebang, I believe in the process. So if you want to follow me on my journey, make sure that you're subscribed, because I actually go live stream daily. I know I'm crazy like that. 30-minute writing challenges every single day. And we have a growing and active community. All right, so let's hop into the chat. Dave, welcome back. Back to the wobbly table today, see? Like, right. Once again, I'm out of my studio, so thank you for that reminder. I have to make sure to not touch the wobbly table. I'm like, I missed my desk already. Thanks for the reminder, Dave. All right, and John, he's got his weekend hat on. You know what? I'm upping the style, making the weekends feel, a little more profesh, make them feel a little more upscale. I feel like our weekly writing streams are a little bit more casual, laid back writers group, but the weekends are more of a live experience. Welcome. And Maammy, Telly, welcome. John, Maammy, Telly, I got both of your stories on deck for today. I'm super excited to read both of them. Elizabeth, welcome. A fine hat indeed. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, my friends. Love the flower. Aw. You know what? So the reason actually that I added a flower to this hat, so I got the hat a while back for a wedding, and then for the flower, it was actually a style of flower that my grandmother really enjoyed. And then when she passed away, I ended up putting the flower onto my hat as kind of a remembrance. because I was really close with her. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right. And by the way, if you're watching this on the replay, I got you covered. You can actually skip ahead to the parts of the video that bring you the most value. When the stream ends, I add time codes. So let's say that you got a reading or a critique today, and maybe you missed out part of it, or you're like, I need to listen to that again. You can go back and hop to the part that brings you the most value. Beautiful. And with today's stream, we're actually going to be hopping straight into our readings. Now, as I've been going back and forth, I'm like, all right, I need to do my daily writing sprint. But in the past, when I do the writing sprint at the top of the show, I'm like, sometimes I feel like that defeats the purpose of doing the story critique show. So I'm going to try again to do the writing sprint on the back end of the show. Yeah. So make sure that if you want to get some writing done, or if you want to join me on my last scarecrow journey, to stick around till after these story readings, and we'll get our daily writing sprint in. Hey, what's up, Vaughn? Welcome to the stream. Welcome, my man. I've been meaning to reach out to you, my dude. I'm going to connect with you this weekend. I sent our work to Jim and Jan. Thanks for the reading, man. Aw, I love that. I love that. Thank you. I hope they're doing well, too. That always brings me back to our childhood days. Let's see. Yeah, I'm dealing with bad weather. Yeah. So sometimes this streams to multiple platforms. So by the way, if you're coming from Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, or LinkedIn, welcome. Okay, so we're going to be hopping right into it with the live story readings and critiques. I am excited. Essentially, what I do is I will accept submissions from the previous Saturday up throughout the week. I add them to the queue, and then I will do a live reading and then follow that up with the live critique. And by the way, so who do I have on deck? I have reading number 1. It looks like I got Atomic's story on deck. Atomic, are you here in the stream, my friend? I got your story up first. Highly recommend. Thank you. I got you up here, Atomic. All right. So while I'm prepping that, the submission process. So here's the process, right? If you want your story read, you can send a submission to thecreativeghostwriter@gmail.com. The email is listed at the ticker down below. I'll make sure to check my email consistently. If you send me a submission without messing up the table, if you send me a submission during the live stream itself, just make sure to throw a message in the chat so that way I can go check my email to make sure I got it. I generally read submissions in the order that I receive them. I've been playing around with the idea of starting the top of the show, earlier submissions, guaranteeing first time readings and critiques if I haven't done a reading and critique for you before. So that way I can make sure that new time viewers are able to see and get the value if they want to continue submitting as well. So that's something I've been playing around with. Now, in terms of the submission and the reading itself, I split each reading into a 20-minute segment, 10 minutes reading, 10 minutes critique, which reminds me, I need to bring up my timer. So I split them up into 10 minutes reading, 10 minutes critique. And I also need to bring up my guidelines. All right, and I'll let y'all see this here. Perfect. So there's last scarecrow. Let's go here. So when I'm going through the stories and when I'm reading, sometimes I'll highlight excerpts or I'll highlight sections throughout. If I'm highlighting it, it doesn't mean anything good or bad. It's just a reminder for myself on things that I want to touch upon. The things that I like to focus on are the 5 core elements of creative writing. I like to focus on character development, world building, dialogue, plot or narrative, and structure or grammar. So those are the 5 areas. I'll usually highlight and pay special attention to 1 to 3 of them, depending on what stands out. Now, if you're listening and you're like, that sounds really cool, I actually encourage you to join the conversation, throw up your comments in the comment section, and help me with providing guidance and trying to help others improve their stories. The thing that I also want to throw out is if we're putting our stories up for submission, we want to go into any submission, any critique, any workshop experience with the expectation that if anybody gives us feedback, they want to help us improve our story. I'm of the mindset that any feedback is good feedback. As long as you're kind with the way that you talk about your feedback, anything works. Because at the end of the day, I want to help you finish your story, get it published so you can put it out there. And when I put my stories out for workshops, I never want people to hold back. So if people hold back, then that means that I can't get my story to that best level. So when it's published, it encourages and it engages with the most people. All right, so I did that. Formatting, I blow up the formatting on each of the stories. So usually what writers will submit, they'll usually submit generally single space, 12 point. I blow them up to Comic Sans and double the font for your pleasure. So that way you can read along with me as I'm doing the readings. All right, perfect. I think those are all the things that I got. So let me pull up Atomic's story. Where do I got the Atomic? And I need to get to my timer. All right, bear with me just a moment, my friends, while I get this timer set up. And I'm definitely going to make sure to touch the desk as little as possible because, as Dave called out, this is wobbly desk. I like that this studio becomes the wobbly desk studio. All right, perfect. So I got this and I should be all set here. I always got to adjust it on my end to make sure that you guys can see as much as possible. All right, perfecto. And I am all set. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, so we got Atomic story here, reading number 1. Perfect. So as you can see, what Atomic did, let's see, let me just check the comments. Says, great idea, Sregas will understand. Let's see, I highly recommend, buy his product, website is awesome. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that, man. If you want to know more about me, my website is thecreativeghost.com. It tells all about me and all the services I offer. Much appreciated. Let's see, it was a great idea. Yep. Thanks for the share. The more we share it, the more we'll put out there, the more writers come to the community, and the more we get better feedback for your stories. Let's see, that game was never released. Yep. So the reason that I had the picture, so I want to say this was last weekend's. So last weekend at the end of our Creative Right Now podcast, we did a writing exercise. No, this was 2 weekends ago. This was on the first one. So 2 weeks ago, we did a creative writing exercise. We put a prompt into ChatGPT to see what story would come out. I wanted to see if I could write a better story than ChatGPT. So we had it generate a random image, and then we created a story as inspiration, and then ChatGPT also created a story. I had a lot of fun doing it. I know Atomic joined in on the exercise, and this was a story that he came up with, and he wanted to share it. So I'm super excited to dig into this and see what we got. Okay. Ole. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream from Twitch. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so we're going to start off. I got 20 minutes on the clock. Making sure that my lighting is good. Y'all can see me all right. Missing my studio a little bit, but we will survive. Okay, and let's see. I want to drop this. I don't need my headline. Okay. And I am all ready. Icekind. A sharp spike of ice pierced the skin of Frander's leg. He let out a howl of pain and then shattered the ice with a swift blow from his nightblade. His opponent circled, looking for another opening. Frander wasn't about to give it to him, if he could help it. The wound left a trail of small droplets on the snow-covered ground as he dodged another volley of ice shards. Give up now and your life will be spared, the pale figure said in a voice that sounded much like a cold wind blowing through the barren trees. Give up now or your life will be spared, the pale figure said in a voice that sounded much like a cold wind blowing through the barren trees. Frander knew a life in servitude to the Icekind would be a life not worth living. There was nothing kind about them. Go eat fire, he snarled, swinging his nightblade in a series of arcs that forced the dark-robed figure to retreat. The eyes glowed a deep ruby red from the sunken eye sockets. It lunged forward, trying to take advantage of the end of his exertion, but he was ready this time. Frander brought his blade back around with the spin of his whole body, tucking the hilt tight against his waist at the last moment for a sudden increase of momentum. The blade found its mark and sliced cleanly through the extended arm, except for a thin section of flesh on the opposite side. The resulting howl pierced his skull and made his teeth chatter together. He braced himself for another onslaught, but there was no fight left in the beast. It turned and ran, the injured arm flopping uselessly at its side. Frander sunk to his knees, his breathing still heavy. He pulled a small vial from his pouch and quickly sprinkled some of its contents, a fine white powder, onto his blade. It sizzled as it came in contact with the blood on the blade surface, negating the effect of the acid. End prompt. That was a quick, easy little writing exercise, and I absolutely love what Atomic did with that. That was a fun little short story. Now, something else that Atomic included, he did the same thing, and he actually threw up his critique, or he threw up his prompt into a different chat, into a different GBT, another AI. So he used Claude AI to come up with the prompt, while I use ChatGPT. I'm curious to see what the Claude AI actually came up with. So we're going to have a little fun, and we're going to see what the AI came up with for the same image and prompt style. So this is what he prompted to Claude AI. You are an editor for a publishing company that represents authors of award-winning novels. Examine the following excerpt and make it better. Okay, so he used it as an editing piece. Interesting. All right, so let's see what we got. A jagged shard of ice pierced Frander's calf, biting through leather and flesh. He roared in pain, then shattered the projectile with a swift strike of his nightblade. His pale adversary circled warily, seeking another opening. Frander refused to oblige, hobbling to keep the foe in his sights as crimson droplets stippled the virgin snow. Yield and you'll keep your life, The hooded figure hissed, its voice like an icy wind scraping bare branches. Frander knew subjugation to the merciless Icekind meant a fate worse than death. Eat hellfire, ice demon! He spat, lashing out with the flurry of swinging arcs. His attacker backpedaled, avoiding the whistling blade's keening edge. Ruby embers smoldered in its deep-set sockets as it feinted, trying to catch Frander off his guard. When his flailing overextended, he twisted at the last instant, whipping the night blade's hilt tight against his flank to augment its murderous velocity. His sword found its mark, shearing through the outstretched arm, all but a tenuous flap of flesh. An unholy shriek lanced Frander's skull, setting his teeth chattering. He tensed for renewed onslaught, but the maimed creature fled, its severed limb flapping grotesquely. Frander collapsed to his knees, ragged breaths plumbing on the frosty air. He uncorked a stoppered vial and sprinkled white powder on his blade, where acidic ichor still sizzled. End the Claude AI excerpt. Whew, man, that was interesting. I was actually very fascinated to see how much the AI adjusted Atomic's original story. Were you, as the viewer, able to see the difference between the two stories? I feel like with Atomic's original version, it was focused on telling a little bit of a longer narrative. So we ended up seeing, I wouldn't say we saw a greater amount of description. So we saw more, there was a little bit more length. We ended up seeing a little bit more of the intro and the ending. Whereas with the AI itself, the AI basically shortened the story. And what it did was it adjusted a lot of the sentences and increased the word variety. So if I were a beginner writer and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm working on a budget. I don't have enough to pay for an editor. Something like an AI would probably be beneficial for you. Because I think the benefits of it would be the word choice. I think the AI does a good job of pulling these very unique word choices that I'm like, yeah, I could have found, but it would have taken me time to research, right? What AI does is it helps increase the efficiency. And especially because writing a story can be a process, I actually found that very fascinating. Now, in terms of the AI's version of the story, I liked overall, I liked the Atomic story better as an overall scope, but I liked some of the word choice in the battle itself with the AI a little better, because I think some of the word choice, some of the descriptions were actually very intriguing that the AI chose to use, but I felt like I was following a fuller character journey with Atomics. So I think it's something really interesting. I think if I was going to be intentional with it, as a writer, if I were going to take it into my own process, I would probably use it as an editing tool for excerpts, right? So if there was an excerpt where I was struggling with, even if it was a couple paragraphs, and then I would have to put in very specific prompts to it to get the result that I want. Because if there's one thing we know with AI, the value you get is based off whatever type of input you put into it. The more detailed the input, the more likely you are to get the value that you're looking for. So I thought that was actually really, really interesting. Let's see. In terms of the story itself, let me pull this up. So in terms of the story itself, I want to say I absolutely loved, and let's just recognize that this was a free write, right? That Atomic did during I want to say it was a 20-minute free write, and that is so cool. I want to highlight that because I've been moving in the direction of us doing free writes on weekends, because it's a cool creative thing that maybe we've been stuck in our writing, or maybe we're feeling like writing something different. And I love the pictures that I get from these GBTs. I give them prompts and they give me really interesting pictures. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect inspiration for a story. Let's see. Let's see. I know, John, you were saying the AI repeats consonants and hissing and lulls and clacks too much, which makes it sound trite to me. Yeah, so you can definitely tell if the longer that we're around AI, the more you kind of get an ear for the style of context and the style of word choice that AI ends up using. ChatGPT writing has too many cliches. Yeah, you know what? When we did this exercise, I want to say it was 2 weekends ago when I did the Kauffman versus AI stream. That was actually one of the things we touched upon because we did a more generic story and a more generic prompt into it. And the story it gave us, it was like, I wouldn't say it wasn't horrible. Like it wasn't like a horrible pile of garbage, but it very much sounded like if I gave a story prompt to like a child, right? It I think it will be interesting to see how AI evolves over time. But right now, the type of stories that you get out of it is highly focused on cliches and overly descriptive word styles. All right, I would absolutely agree with that. It is still better than novel AI. And you know what? That's an AI that I haven't even used yet. But I know I haven't used too many novel writing softwares before. The AI is good at descriptions, but not psychology. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. 100%. Right. So that's why like the descriptions work on like a surface level. And I think if I was a writer who struggled with like word choice, I think it would be a good thing to learn from. But for me, what I would do is I would put in the excerpt that I need, I pull it out, and then I would use that to get inspiration for different styles of word choice. Because then I would add those specific types of words that like I wasn't used to, pull it into my own vocabulary, and then rewrite it myself and do it better now that I have a couple more variety of words in my mind. Absolutely agree with that. But I know a lot of the novel writing softwares all probably have AI features. I've been so used to Word for so long that I don't use any of them. But let's see. So with I'm just going to dig into Atomic's version. So I think what I absolutely loved is I feel like Atomic did a really great job of capturing this specific moment, this specific battle, right? Between Frander and this ice-like creature. Shattered the ice with a swift blow from his Nightblade. Yep, that looks like a Nightblade. Let's see. And then Frander isn't about to give it to him. The one left. The pale figure said in a voice that sounded much like a cold wind blowing through the barren trees. It sounded much like in a voice that sounded much like the cold wind blowing through the barren trees. I love that description. I love that. What's that? A like is a what's that? A simile? I'm like making sure I'm using the right description here. But I absolutely love that word choice. And I feel like it kind of makes it a little more like descriptive. I know when I was reading it, I had to go back because I was like, I actually like that. I want to make sure I'm saying that dialogue correctly. And by the way, I do all of these story readings without having read them previously. They're all done as cold readings. So that way you get the most like entertainment value out of me like doing reading a story for the first time. So I get to kind of like experience the story with you. Let's see. It's the as good. Yeah, I'd agree. Word choice is absolutely what can elevate a story's level. I don't know if level is the right word. And I think that's why as writers, if you've been working on storytelling for a while, or if you're just starting out, one of your best friends is learning a variety of words. The more words that you have to rely on up here, or when you're writing, whether you're looking at like a dictionaries or looking at word lists online, it gives you more variety. One of the things that make for great stories is a story told using words that we're familiar with, using some words we're not, but it allows us to follow the story because you never want to hear a paragraph. He said this, he did this, he's going to do that. You don't like there, unless you're intentional, right? There's times where if you're intentional with words, you do it. But on average, I try to stay away from personally using the same word multiple times in a paragraph if I'm able to get away with it. Absolutely agree. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Isabella. Atomic's use of words are very pleasant to hear, like sizzled, pierced, and shattered. I'm loving your vocabulary, Atomic. Let's see. Go eat fire. That is absolutely like great dialogue. Go eat fire. Right? Like that's like perfect because it gives the character a personality. It gives the character a very unique personality just in 3 words of dialogue. Atomic, when you check this out, I like absolutely have to commend you. This is super cool. And I think this is a great job of using dialogue for character development. It would be so easy to see the character respond, be like, I'm going to kill you, creature. Go die. Go eat fire. And that also works as the antithesis to an ice creature. Perfect. Let's see. The glowing ruby red from the sunken eye sockets. Beautiful. Yeah, I think the strongest portion actually of Atomic's story is absolutely the word choice, because the word choice helps elevate the character development and it makes the story clearer. And that's actually why the AI version feels so different, because Atomic's already using a very unique vocabulary. Let's see, it lunged forward. Yeah, Fernando brought his black blade. And this is such a great moment. It turned and ran, the injured arm flapping uselessly at its side. Like, what? That's just so descriptive. And like, we think about this, we go back up to the image. It turned and ran, its arm flapping uselessly at its side. And now you just imagine this creature, which looks so menacing, with its arm like dangling out as it's fleeing the scene. Like, that was a really good call. And then it's interesting that he ends the scene with basically not healing, but kind of like fixing his blade. Pulled a small vial from a pouch and quickly sprinkled some of its contents, sizzled as it came into contact with the blood, negating the effect of the acid. Right? So it's interesting that it starts off with him already in the middle of this fight, and then it ends off with the sword. So you could actually almost argue that the protagonist of the story is actually Nightblade. If we're like really thinking about character development, Nightblade is technically the protagonist, because the protagonist doesn't have to be a human, doesn't have to be an animal, it can be an inanimate object, it could be whatever you want. The beautiful thing is you're the storyteller, tell the story you want. If you want to tell a story about a block, tell a story about a block. I think as a side note, a movie that I saw, a movie that did very well last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you've ever seen that movie, there's a scene in it during like their alternate timeline thing where they have a scene with literally two rocks talking to each other. And I don't think I'd ever seen or ever thought that you could see a scene out of a film that's progressing the narrative, that's progressing the story effectively with literally just, it's a still shot of two rocks talking together. Like, I was like, that was creative. If there's if you like alternate timeline and crazy movies like that, that was definitely a fun movie. So yeah, so I would think this is really good. I think if I was going to expand this into a longer story, I would say I would actually probably be starting off with the beginning of the character Frander and Nightblade. I'm actually kind of curious to know, like, if this story were more fleshed out, does Nightblade, is that sword, is it found prior to this battle? Has a character always had Nightblade? How does the sword affect the character? Right now, the sword's used as kind of like a combat obviously a combat thing to fight the beast. But we get the interesting description. This white powder, it sizzles when it comes into contact with the blood on the blade surface, negating the effect of the acid. Now, is that because of the acid that the creature spews, or is that partially because of the effect, the innate ability of the blade? And that I would be really interesting to tell. Now, with objects that we not so in the fantasy genre, a very commonly used I don't know if it's a trope, but a very commonly used thing is enchanted blades. That's like a very popular thing in the fantasy genre. And I would say the enchanted blade trope is always used as a supporting tool to support the hero. Something that I haven't seen done before is, have we seen a story where the enchanted blade is actually the hero? Food for thought. For your next story, a story literally where the blade itself is the hero, and the supporting and the heroes that you think are the heroes are actually supporting the blade. That would be an interesting concept. But yeah, I would flesh this out in the Nightblade if I was going to expand it anymore. So, all right, beautiful, excellent, wonderful. Atomic, thank you so much for joining on this excerpt, and thanks so much for submitting it. I had way too much fun reading that. That was a really great read. All right, and let me pull myself back up. Beautiful, fun. I love that. Okay, so let's see. One-armed, the one-armed Naruto. I know, actually, I mean, I imagine the same thing as he's running with like the Naruto like flapping his one arm behind him. Oh my goodness. I was talking to someone about anime lately, and we were talking about Naruto, and I'm like, favorite anime out there? Death Note. Absolutely will always be Death Note. I like switch off. I kind of watch all varieties of television, from horror, drama, thriller, comedy. Anime is like one of them that I'll watch intermittently when I'm in the mood for some like an animated. Let's see. I'm reminded of Grendel. Interesting. Maammy Telly, are you speaking of Grendel from Wheel of Time? I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that's one of the characters in there. Which story are you referring to? So did your brother make it to India? Vaughn, I see what you're saying. Yeah, my brother, yeah, he's playing at EDC. Thanks for asking. He's for any of you who know, little younger Kauffman is a DJ, right? A really cool DJ actually, but he plays in a lot of the festival circuits. Beowulf, absolutely. Beowulf is such a classic. Oh my goodness. Beowulf is such a classic. And John, like, you picked up on that too. I'm like, yeah, that went right over my head. It's been a while since I've checked out Beowulf. Talk about what a great, a phenomenal hero's journey. Beowulf is a really good one. A little hard to get through simply because of the style of it is more dense. A lot of Greek mythology type stories tend to be can be more challenging based on which the author, but definitely, absolutely a great story. Vaughn, thanks for asking. I think of this, I would say of Atomic Story, Icekind, I would say, I would actually say the description of the creature was absolutely my favorite, because like the way that the creature spoke, I think that just like painted such a picture for me. And then the way that Frander responded, loved it. Absolutely loved it. No, Beowulf, yeah. Beowulf. Yeah, it is, right? It's kind of the same thing with Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare, classic, worth reading Shakespeare, but it's its own language. And you have to be prepared that it's going to be difficult to get through, because you're going to have to get used to the unique word choice, the style, the context, and all the things that go into really fully understanding it. Hence why a lot of the times when you're going through the education system, if you're pursuing an English degree, writing degree, journalism, whatever, you usually end up doing reviewing and analyzing those types of works, right? Popular to do things like Greek mythology is a popular one, Shakespeare is, classic novels, because they really challenge your worldview, and they also challenge sentence structure, word choice, and all the things that go into making your own universe. And I think that's something to be commended, right? If we're working on stories as writers, the thing that we want, the thing that would be incredible, is for us to be able to create a self-told story within its own world that has such a unique language, worldview, characters, that you really have to get into it to really fully understand the context, because that's hard. It's not everybody can be a Shakespeare. Not everybody can write Beowulf, right? Because they're difficult styles to write, but they work. Absolutely agree. Oh, how many days of writing? Yeah, Vaughn, I'm actually, yesterday was day 120 of Kauffman Writes. Since I've rebranded the show, Kauffman Writes is my the casual writing sprints Monday through Friday, whereas Saturday is now fully the story and critique show, and Sunday is the Creative Right Now podcast. I probably need to do like a keep the tracker on, since I'm going to be counting them a little differently. But I think I'm somewhere in probably like the 130s now in terms of how many days I've been writing back to back. Okay, so let me pull up our next, let me call out our next story. Emmie, Yonder. Emmie, I got your story on deck. And I know I saw you here in the chat as well, my friend. Emmie, Yonder. So I'm going to pull up your story. I'm super excited. By the way, Emmie, thank you for submitting your story to the community. I'm like super eager to get into it. Let's see. All right, let me pull it up here. You know, John, Canterbury Tales is one that I didn't end up reading. I think that was one that was not skipped, but it's just one we didn't cover. I think my favorite English classic novel that I read in I would say at least in high school was probably Lord of the Flies. I loved the Lord of the Flies. I loved analyzing it. I loved the character backgrounds. I loved the description. I loved the story. I was definitely a fan of it. Absolutely. Let's see. Yes, please add. Yeah, Vaughn, what I'll probably do is, since I am like recounting, since I've kind of changed the counting structure, maybe I'll probably come up with some sort of ticker that maybe I can add of like how many days I've been writing, because since I've renamed the shows. Absolutely. Let's see. Emmie, yay. Let's see. So let me pull up Nostrum. Beautiful. All right, and I think I got this all queued up. So let me switch screens. Perfect. And then I need to get my highlighter ready. Perfect. All right, I am all good. I need to figure out what the hotkey is for highlighters in MS Word. That'll probably be easier. Let's see. Before I get started, it looks like Lord of the Flies. Absolutely. I know. I was like, I had a reference. When I think of classics, my favorite two is probably Don Quixote and then Lord of the Flies. There was one Steinbeck that I absolutely loved. What's interesting is I hated Steinbeck novels. Like I hated Steinbeck with like a dying passion. Like I could not get through most of his stories when we had to, but there was one that I absolutely really enjoyed. And I think it was East of Eden.
And as interesting is because I loved the character descriptions and the character journey in there. Let's see, I did that. What? Knowing I have a real scroll. No, let's see, John, you're naming some really great classics here. Lord of the Flies, Animal Farm, absolutely great classic. Wuthering Heights was incredible. Talk about a great deep dive into romance. Like, oof, Wuthering Heights was great, especially a dark romance. Loved it. And I even hated it when I was, Wuthering Heights had this like kind of like love-hate relationship because it goes through such different time periods throughout their that kind of like dark romance. It really brings me back. Makes me feel like I need to go read another classic novel. Okay. So let's see. So Emmie, you just wanted to call out, this is the third remaining of something I worked on in 2016 and 2019. Perfect. All right. So it looks like, so we got the first excerpt. This is chapter 1 sample. I got the story, the timer all set. Let me drop that. Nostrum by, I want to say it was Emmie, Yonder, chapter 1 sample. Good eve, vice headmistress, the girl said with head bowed low, her brown fringe obscuring her expression. I've just dropped your meeting meal with headmaster. The queen requests you when you're done with him, but said that there's no rush. Thank you for letting me know, Adria said, turning to reverse the pattern lock on her office. Sounds like I'll be in for a late night then. I made sure the kitchen included peppermint tea, and I'll be sure the clock stays filled. If only everything ran with your precision, Adria said with a wry smile. She nodded the girl a silent farewell as her low-heeled riding boots echoed on the polished slate floors. The door to Thurin's offices and private suite was 50 paces down the hall and far more ornate than her own, ostentious even. Heartwood bound with bronze and carved with intricate scenes of boar and beast hunts, horses, huntsmen, and hounds curved in a perpetual chase around a massive split crest of a rampant boar, whose tusks formed the door handles. Rings through the boar's ears served as door knockers. Squaring her shoulders and tilting her head down in deference, Adria let the left knocker fall twice, one long knock, one short. Having announced herself, she ran her thumb along the edge of the folio, making sure the files within were perfectly aligned. Far be it from her to make assumptions about her superior's plans, but she could guess what or who the main point of discussion would be this evening. Locking mechanisms clattered from within the door, and with a sharp click, the boar's ivory tusks turned outward. The door swung open on silent hinges. She stepped through, pulling the door shut behind her. Thurin stood with his hands spread flat, the table laden with a meal suitable for working while dining. Several folios were arranged in an arc to his right. Fine. Fine. Everything. Fine evening, isn't it? Thurin said casually, swinging around to her side of the table to pull out her chair. While you were out risking your life, jogging that ornery beast of yours in the frozen muck, I was with Maurice in the penitence hall, seeing to the woes of the unwashed masses. Any sob stories worth recounting? Adria pulled out her notebook, pen, and inkwell, forever ready at hand, almost an extension of herself at this point. Perhaps the stable help? Stud was particularly unamused about being put back in his run this afternoon. You could geld him, you know.
And miss the income from his standing fees? Never. Adria chuckled, pouring herself a cup of tea and helping herself to a steaming roll from the basket between them. So, what of the big fish you left rotting on my desk this afternoon? A rotten fish indeed. I'm surprised it took him that many years to get caught, given his apparent taste for misbehavior. The meal itself was lovely and made the work more pleasant. The main course was roast pheasant, herbed and stuffed with figs and barley, rings of sweet winter squash, roasted with goat cheese and drizzled with maple, and a salad of forced hot house greens rounded out the meal. There were definite upsides to sharing a wing with the impetory administration. Between bites, they exchanged comments on the application of Inundian law in similar cases past. Dinners with Thurin were an ever-shifting mix of work, banter, and barbs. Behind the pleasant repartee, there was an undercurrent she couldn't quite place. Something about this convict had both Thurin and the Queen on edge. For a long moment, silence fell between them as they leafed through their respective copies of the file. Adria broke the silence first. There's a lot here, Thurin, but nothing that will stick beyond bootlegging and contraband unless we can find a way to make him change his tune on his network. His bloodline is suspect, but being slippery runs in the family. We've had them on trial more times than I've seen anyone escape us. Just so, and frustrating. They've cost us greatly over the past 100 years, and the Queen is harrowed about it, to say the least. You know as well as I do that she loathes having the Nostrum on her streets. It's truly filthy stuff. She scrunched her nose at that, as if the mention of the word made her food seem less appealing. As you say, strike the root. I'll set a dozen of the more zealous apprentices streetwise to handle the fallout. Did you have any particular names in mind? Use your discretion. I trust you. I trust you'll choose appropriately. Thurin said, raking a hand through his gray-streaked wheat blonde hair. Once you've got them sorted, I'll be sending you an assignment. For now, a proposal, if you'll hear it. If it gets me out from behind my desk, you know I'm game. Unless you've decided you no longer like your pampered court darlings. I don't know, Thurin. That seems like a breach of the guild code of conduct. She made cow eyes at him, and he rewarded her with a sardonic chuckle and a long-suffering sigh. Thurin was old enough to be her father, and while he had retired from field work 4 decades prior, he still retained his warrior's bearing. A heartbreaker in his youth, he had climbed the impetory ranks with equal parts charm and prowess. He wore his beard cropped close to his lantern jaw, and his eyes, the color of aged brandy, were punctuated with lines worn from years of intense focus. If you can get me to the heart of his web, I'll make you headmistress, he said, and that focus held hers, pinning the humor out of her like a butterfly tacked to a specimen board. A bolt of cold slithered through her, from the nape of her neck to the pit of her stomach. This had been nowhere in her estimation of the evening's doings, nowhere in her life plan for a dozen years at least. She schooled her reaction into the closest semblance of neutrality that such an ask could have warranted. As she dissected a particular sumptuous bite, a pheasant, from the carcass on her plate, she struggled to come up with an appropriate response. What on earth am I to say to that? Damned if I do, damned if I don't. Words tumbled over each other in her mind as she chewed, but none seemed to fit together in the right order. Honesty seemed the best policy in lieu of stammering foolish platitudes. She sketched the impetory sigil in a margin of her notebook, underlined it twice, and added a question mark. Thurin, I'm honored, but I don't understand. Why this and why now? Thurin turned his gaze toward the embossed tin ceiling. You'll hear more from Maurice later. about the how and the why. But let's just say that it's long past time for the crown and the guild to strike a united blow against those who seek to upend the social order, he said. He pushed his plate away and spun another file to her. Adria trapped it with the flat of her hand before it could spew its contents into the remains of her meal. Anything else I should know before I meet with the queen? Should I assume we'll be having dinner again tomorrow night? You're free to go. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time. Understood, sir, she said, and hastily packed her clerical kit away, corking the ink bottle tight and wiping the spiraled brass pen clean on a scrap of flannel she kept in the holster. Tucking the 2 folios under her arm, she looked over her shoulder as she turned to depart his office. Thurin was already reburied in the convict's files, brows furrowed. As soon as she shut the door behind her, the boar's tusks snapped back to their locked position, jutting upward in dismissal. Wow, that went fabulously. End excerpt. I absolutely loved your description and the way that you describe. I'm like thinking of another description word. I loved the way that you described each of the characters and the actions throughout the scene. I feel like throughout their meeting, throughout the sit down between Adria and Thurin, I had a very clear sense of kind of the actions and what was going on between the two of them. I would say that character development was absolutely the strongest portion of this. You did a lot of telling with the world building and the plot. I think there's maybe a couple opportunities there, but I kind of had a good like initial sense of like, okay, so there's this like worldview with like this uprising and a lot of things that are probably going on. They're trying to potentially getting to the bottom of this case. You touch upon things like the guild, which speak to the world building, which gives me the sense that you have a clear idea of the overall world, which is super cool. I absolutely love that. I think if I were to pick something, I think dialogue. This is the thing. You kind of go back and forth because there's some points where the description and the dialogue are incredible. And then there's some other points where I got a little lost. So I think it would probably just benefit from going back through a round of editing. And like you said, it had been years since you had touched upon this. But the overall story was interesting. I'm kind of curious to learn more about Adria's character. I like Adria as a name. I think when I think of like fiction, I've only ever heard her description of Adria as kind of like an older character. And Adria is the head mistress. She is the vice head mistress. And okay, that's good because she already has that position of authority, which makes me guess that the story is going to be about, based off just this brief excerpt of chapter 1, it makes me think that this story is going to be about Adria's journey through dealing with this convict, dealing with some sort of uprising in this world, while probably doing something that's going to go against the guild. But that would just be my guess from an initial first reading. Let's see. Let me just left knockers for all. Yeah, and I think, John, this is something I agree with. I think I think what this excerpt would benefit from, because like the character development is there. I don't want to mess that up. The character development is there. The world building is there. The dialogue is there. The plot and narrative is there. I would say probably it's a little bit more on like the structure, and really it just needs a line edit, right? Because all the things I like. This is actually a good rough draft. I would actually be very happy if I came out with a story and it has this much in the rough draft itself. This is usually like around the time where I'd recommend hand it off to somebody to do either, might not need a developmental edit because I have the feeling that your overall world is very clear, but I think it's just a line edit and it's just cutting down unnecessary things, fixing some dialogue, and adjusting things throughout. Let's see. Hey, by the way, Atomic, we literally we did your reading. I did your story reading right before this. So make sure after the stream ends that you go check out the replay. We had a lot of fun doing it. Your excerpt, Icekind was incredible. Absolutely loved it. Okay, so Emmie, let's see. So thanks. So far, I see he's found the things I was like, we'll fix it in post. Oh my goodness. I was watching a show lately, Has Been Hotel, and like one of the like quote things she says on it is like they're getting upset about something, and then she just screams. She's like, I'll fix it in post. And I'm like, that line just stuck with me. Anytime there's a problem, I'll fix it in post. Let's see. Good to hear. That's where I was hoping I'd gone this. Yeah, I would say this is definitely ready for a line edit. Absolutely. It would be hard for me to say if like maybe it needs like a developmental edit. I would kind of have to see a little bit more of the story, but it feels like the core of the story is there. Absolutely. So let me dig into a little bit and I can kind of give you some brief examples. So I think the biggest thing, I mean, beyond indenting paragraphs, but that actually could have just been from me reformatting it. So that could have been a me thing. But I think the biggest thing that might have lost me in the beginning or kind of made it hard for me to wrap my head around was using the dialogue and the speech tags. So you said, good evening, headmistress. The girl said, I've just dropped by. Okay, so here's why. So when you're continuing dialogue within the same paragraph, you're always using commas as a continuation, right? So you'd use that here and there, unless you're using another type of dialogue. I think that's why it made me confused. I'm like, wait, it was the same paragraph, but it is the same speaker, right? So the girl said, that's perfect. The girl said with head bowed low. I think with something like this, I would almost give the girl some type of description, right? And even if she's just like a one-off character, good evening, Vice Headmistress. The girl with the giant red bow on her head said with head bowed low, her brown fringe obscuring her expression. But just something that gives the reader like an instant, like, okay, what's my initial vision of this? You don't have to go into too much description. Some writers love to go way too much description. Some writers like to go little. The style and choice of description is your call. But you still want to give the reader something to give them the initial jumping point. Let's see, I've just dropped your meeting with headmaster. The queen requests you when you're done with him, but say that there's no rush. So I've just dropped your meeting with headmaster. Yeah, I think this would be I've just dropped your meeting with headmaster. The queen requests the queen requests your attention. I would go, the queen requests your attention when you're done with them. But said, I would do that. Done with them. He said that there's no rush. I think I would do that. I think that's just a little cleaner. He said that there is. You can do both, but I think that makes it cleaner for this character specifically. Let's see. The girl with the giant ponytail. Good evening, Vice Headmistress. The girl with the giant ponytail said with head bowed low, her brown fringe obscuring her expression. I've just dropped your meeting meal with headmaster. The queen requests your attention when you're done with him. When you're done with him, he said that there is no rush. Done with him. Yeah, I would do that. And thank you for letting me know, Adria said, turning to reverse the pattern lock on her office. Sounds like I'll be in for a late night then. I made sure the kitchen included peppermint tea, and I'll be sure the clock stays filled. Now, something that I absolutely loved from your storytelling, you use such great descriptions for Adria and Thurin a little farther down here. It's somewhere during their conversation. And I love the description. I think I want like an initial description of Adria here, even if it's just a line, because I want to get, once again, some initial idea of who is Adria. Beyond that, she's a vice headmistress, but like a vice headmistress could mean any number of things because we don't know what the world of the story is yet. Could it be a vice headmistress from like Hogwarts and Harry Potter world, or is it a vice
headmistress from like a school in our day and age, right? So we want to give some type of description that makes it clear, or gives us like that initial like taste of like, okay, Adria, what's her defining thing right now? And then you can further describe it later on. If you're letting me know, Adria said, turning to reverse, sounds like I'll be in for a late night then. And like her character, what she says works. Like, that's fine. She sounds kind of mature the way she responds. I made sure the kitchen. And I think this is what threw me off, right? So I wasn't sure if this was its own paragraph or if it was here. Sounds like I'll be in for a late night then. I made sure the kitchen include peppermint tea, and I'll be sure the clock stays filled. Said with a wry smile. Now, okay, so I think this is the girls. That's probably why. So you do that. So then it's partially because you want to indent, but then you also, when it changes paragraphs, like that was good. You changed paragraphs with the new speaker, which was great. But now we need to indicate. I mean, like technically it's only the two of them. So that's actually fine. So for me, it was probably more just the formatting. For me, just knowing indent, new paragraph. And just so you know, it honestly could have been way more clear in the original version you sent me. It could just be from the way that I structured this, and that is absolutely a possibility. I made sure the kitchen included peppermint tea. I would almost include headmistress. That would kind of make her come across a little more like youthful, a little more young. I made sure the kitchen include peppermint tea, vice headmistress. And I think that would actually add to the youthfulness of this young girl. And I'll be sure the clock stays filled. And I think this was almost like a good opportunity for like a little description, like a brief description on like I'll be sure the clock stays filled. The girl said, the girl off the top of my head, the girl spewed forth. No, not spewed. The girl said quickly. The girl bowed her head even lower. If only everything ran with your precision, Adria said with a wry smile. Now you see, that's good. She nodded the girl's silent farewell as her low-heeled riding boots echoed on the polished slate floor. She nodded the girl a silent farewell. So the challenge with this, so she and her, okay, that's why. So she, because technically Adria said with a wry smile, the problem is she and her are now, but well, technically you said she nodded the girl a silent farewell as her low-heeled riding boots. She nodded the girl a silent farewell. She nodded, so okay, I would do it like this. She nodded a silent farewell as the girls, yep, so this is a little clearer, as the girls' low-heeled riding boots. Actually, I don't know if this is as the girls, it's her boots. As the girls' low-heeled riding boots echoed on the polished slate floors. So I would actually almost like, if you're going to pick a thing that stands out, reference the riding boots in the very beginning, right? And I think this is like a clear thing. Oh, this is the girl with the low-heeled riding boots. Only everything ran with your precision, Adria said with a wry smile. She nodded a silent farewell as the girl's low-heeled riding boots echoed on the polished slate floors. It just makes it a little cleaner. Let's see, the door to Thurn's office, the power suite was 50 and far more ornate than her own ostentious, their own. I love this. Once again, like your description, I love the descriptions that you use. And I know I kind of focused the beginning on a little bit more of a line edit because I want you to just get a greater sense of like how it could really benefit from going sentence by sentence. If I was going to like brush through this quickly, I just wanted to highlight, I like Thurn's character. Thurn is fun. And I like her character. I think you do a lot of setup as to like the plot and the world, which is cool. I kind of want to know a little bit more. I think with a little more like line editing, you could kind of make it a little clearer. Right now, I know there's some like type of like prisoner. The world itself is clear. I feel like I'm in the world. I just better need to understand what it is that they're trying to figure out. Other than that, it's some type of case. And I think that would just be cleaning it up. But the descriptions you use, like I highlighted a couple areas here.
And by the way, I have to commend you. Something that fantasy writers struggle with is using food effectively. You did a great job of setting their course and setting the type of food to be a very unique style of food. The main course was roast pheasant, herbed and stuffed with figs and barley. Rings of sweet winter squash, roasted with goat cheese and drizzled with maple, and a salad of forced hothouse greens rounded out the meal. That like makes me hungry. Emmie, I like totally blame you if I want food now because that's a good description. I'm like, that does sound good. So I definitely have to commend that because that's actually a hard thing, or that's something that writers easily overlook. Fantasy stories, the characters are always eating like stew. It's called the fantasy stew trope. So that was awesome. I want to know more about the queen. I'm definitely intrigued by the story. So I think you did a good job of the way you structured it. I'm intrigued. Absolutely. And I feel like I'm going to get to go on this like grand epic with Adria. Let's see. I just want to see. He wore his beard cropped to his and the eyes. And once again, their character descriptions. Their character descriptions are wonderful. I absolutely love their character descriptions. I would almost give Thurin's character description a little sooner as well. Butterfly. Yep. Yeah, I would say your strength is definitely just your descriptions. Yeah. So I think that's I think those are the biggest things that I have for you, Emmie. Obviously, let's see, let me look at that. I'm not sure with the clock. Let's see. I pulled away from the comments for a second. Okay, that can be declunked. Awesome. Okay, yeah, I'm glad you're kind of hearing what I'm saying. There's about 2 pages of warm-up before this. Okay. That's actually good to know so that there's a little bit more of a context. So there's kind of a prologue, which is good to know. Maammy Telly called out that there was, when you say the clock stays filled, I vaguely recall that. I think that's somewhere in the middle. Emmie, what I would do is just make sure that you reread that line and probably just reword it if it comes across confusing. And let's see, I like that. Yeah, and this is a good call out, right? So that's why we always have to balance using the right amount of description. Too much and we get pulled away, too little and we can't get into it. And that's actually usually what line editing fixes, absolutely. Yeah, and I would agree. This is really good as a fantasy piece. Yeah, this is what I was talking about with food. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think once again, like description, Emmie, is entirely a subjective experience. You could for let's go to this, your description with the food, right here. For this could be a perfect amount of description for one reader, but then for another reader, it could be too much. Which is why I always think the best strategy when refining description is if I take out this sentence, if I take out these words and I close my eyes and I hear it read aloud, can I still envision what I'm trying to say? I try to go a little less is more. My rough drafts, I do way too much description. So I actually, I totally get that. But then when I have to go back and edit it, I'm like, that's usually my opportunity. Okay. So you kind of touch a bit about water clocks in the prior pages, and that could actually make a little bit more sense for the clock comment. Awesome. So Emmie, that is all that I got for you, my friend. I want to say thank you so much for submitting that story. I'm like really intrigued. And once again, like I'm a fantasy reader, so that would definitely be up my alley. If you're looking for, when you're ready to get an editor, or if you're looking for a line editor, I actually do offer those services as well. Definitely like we can message if you want to learn more, if you're interested in that. Awesome. Thanks again for sharing, Emmie. That was cool. All right. Wonderful. Excellent. I always love rounding out like different styles of story. We got like the cool like Ice Warrior battle, and now we've kind of gotten like the setup for this kind of like grander fantasy epic, which was fun. I am definitely a fan. Okay, so let's see, what do we got next? All right, comments. Let's see. Excellent. You'll hear from me again. Isabella made a great recommendation. Yes, Isabel, thank you for sending Emmie our way. Absolutely appreciate you, Isabella. You get the heart. Thanks, you too. Appreciate it. All right, so let's go on to, okay. So before we hop over to our next reading, it's time for me to pay some bills. So if you get value out of this stream, or you get value out of any of my stuff, you can actually send me a tip at buymeacoffee.com/thecreativeghost. I appreciate it, as my writing business is my main source of income. And even if everybody tipped me like $1, that'd make a difference. So I appreciate y'all. Tips down below. And now additionally, I have my first affiliate link opportunity. So we touched on this in last weekend's episode of the Creative Right Now podcast. So KaleidoScript Magazine, I'm going to pull them up really quick. KaleidoScript. All right, so KaleidoScript Magazine is actually it's an online global magazine that focuses on short stories. Now, this is just their main website, but it focuses on short stories. I had a great interview last Sunday for the Creative Right Now podcast with Ian and Melissa. Make sure that if like you want to know more about like how to get your short story into a published magazine, like this is definitely the way. And you can actually do it for free, right? It doesn't cost to do. You can have your first submission absolutely free until it gets accepted in the magazine. And then and then they will charge you. Writing prompt, which is super cool. Let me pull up the magazine itself. I'll see. It might pull it up automatically. So here's the first 2 issues which they have. From the first issue, which is actually absolutely free. You can check out the first issue. You don't have to subscribe, and you can go through it. There's some really great stories in here. It's all, their mission is bridging fiction with reality. So there's a focus on short story nonfiction. As you get farther ahead into it, there's a couple fantasy ones at the end. So it's kind of a cool little mix. If you're interested in either learning, like reading other short stories, or you're interested in putting yourself out there, they also actually have a very active community in their socials, and they have a lot more to subscribe. Let's just go to a random page. There we go. It's probably because I was messing around with adding with more web stuff. All right, Jared's gonna stop messing around with other websites right now. So definitely make sure, if you want to check out the magazine or subscribe, the link is down in the description. It's an affiliate link, and I get a percentage if you subscribe to the magazine. So definitely check it out. I really appreciate it. All right, excellent. And what do we got next? So let me jump back into the comments. You're welcome, Bunny Chucker. Oh my goodness. Y'all are a bunch of bunny chuckers. If you're here in the audience and you're a bunny chucker, say I. And so in my story, Last Scarecrow, about, I want to say we were about 45% of the way through the novel. There was a character that, like, there's a bunch of primates that had captured these characters, and one of the characters that they threw into this cage was a bunny, and they picked up the bunny and they just like threw the bunny into the cage. And I think the way that I described it made them bunny chuckers. So it's kind of just started to stick since then. And I'm like, absolutely. Thank you for our bunny chuckers out there. By the way, don't chuck a bunny. Bunny chucking is not nice. Hey, there you go. I mean, I am a magician of sorts, right? I'm a wordsmith, a magician. How do you know? Maybe one of these days the top hat or the fedora comes off and a bunny will come out of it. You never know. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned. Oh man. Okay, so let's see. Who do we got on deck? Reading number 3, Sean. Sean, I got your script on deck. So we've been doing different excerpts of Torrent by Sean Spence. It has been a really great script, actually. We've been going through this whole like thriller script, which has been really, really fun. Okay, so let me pull his up. And like feel it starting to lag a little bit more. Let's see, I don't need that. And I'm just double checking the email one more time. Uno momento. I'm like, I'm like glad that I looked at that my computer was literally about to die. That would not be a good thing, right? If my I'm in the stream and the computer dies. I was like, okay, computer charged, computer not dying on us today. Perfect. Here we go. All right, and I got Torrent all pulled up here. Perfect. And I am all set on my end. All right, I got Torrent. All right, so we're all set for reading number 3. Sean, I got Torrent all set. Just let me know if you're here in the chat. I'm eager to get into this next excerpt. So like I said previously, if you've joined us on previous Saturday story and critique shows, we've actually gone through a couple excerpts of Sean's script, Torrent. It's a thriller script where we're following these two cops as they're trying to uncover like this serial killer called the Teacher. And this like serial killer is creepy AF, let me tell you. My God. Who wants to deal with a serial killer with this like little old lady who's like doing these like really creepy things to people? Okay. So it looks like we're on excerpt 20 to 25. Let me pull up the screen. Awesome. Let me make sure. All right. And I am all set. All right, Torrent. Pages 25 to 30. Interior, Billy's home. Kitchen, night. 2 children, Brad, 16, and Eric, 10, sit silently at the empty dinner table. Heavy rain continues to fall outside. In the distance, we see the front door open as Billy enters. Slamming the door shut, he brushes the water from his jacket. Dropping it on the floor, he quickly heads into the kitchen. I'm sorry. I'm later than I thought I would be. It's the first day and they already had me working my butt off. The 2 boys say nothing. I'm starting to miss desk work. I mean, It was a nice break to clear my mind, but come on. Billy opens the refrigerator door and pulls out a loaf of bread, mayonnaise, and Swiss cheese. He pulls a butter knife from the drawer as he reaches for dinner plates in the cabinet while he continues. My day started with this couple who just do not get along with their sweet old grandmotherly neighbor. At least, I think she's sweet. I didn't get to meet her. Billy hazardly spreads the mayonnaise on 3 slices of the bread, then slaps a slice of cheese on each. Then we had a call where this guy believes he's being haunted by his dead mom. Turns out it was just a feral cat under his house. Small town, right? As Billy puts the loaf of bread back into the fridge, he notices the boys just staring at him. Guys, I said I was sorry. Brad quickly stands and runs upstairs. Brad, come back here. I'm trying. Eric, I really am. I know, Dad. Think I should go talk to him? Yeah, I can heat up the rest. Thanks. Use the one that's in the front first, pal. Billy heads upstairs. Eric pulls a ball of tinfoil from the freezer and begins to unwrap it. Exterior church night later. Nick stands on the front steps of the church. He watches as members of his group enter their cars and pull out of the parking lot onto the rain-soaked streets. Reverend Morrison exits the church and locks it up. He walks up to Nick, standing under the awning at the top of the stairs. Thanks for coming tonight. I don't know if I can do this. I don't think it's for me. Reverend Morrison smiles, enjoying the sound of the falling. How long have we known each other? Well, Elizabeth and I were still married, so a while then, right? Yeah. Well, in that time, I have noticed one of the kindest men I have ever met become one of the most bitter at a marriage that didn't work out, a marriage fought for until the end, not to mention the loss of your friend. You make it sound like he is dead, Reverend. I don't know that, but he has been missing for a while. At some point, you may have to. What I'm trying to say is, I have seen what this world has thrown at you over the last couple of years. You're a strong man. I am not as strong as you think. You're wrong. You're a strong man with a good heart. I know both are in there somewhere. Reverend Morrison points to the center of Nick's chest. All this hostility for life itself, it will just eat away at you until you're the shell of the man I once knew. I want to see the old Nick come back to the living. I saw him poke his head out a little tonight. I don't know. I do. So, this new trainee, he can't be that bad. The guy doesn't have an off switch. Wants to talk all the time. Someone who wants to talk. I hate him already. Nick smiles at this. He could be just what you need. Sorry, pause. He could be just what you need. Funny. That's what Sarge said. You know what they say when two people tell you the same thing? No? There must be some truth to it. Or they're both compulsive liars. Reverend Morrison smiles as Nick chuckles. If you ask me, I believe it's the former. Reverend Morrison opens up his umbrella and takes a couple of steps down into the rain. He turns, looking back up the stairs to address Nick. By the way, have you been by to talk to Garcia's family? Nick stares silently out at the constant rain falling. I'm sure his wife and kids would love to see you. I have no idea what to say to them. The best way to heal yourself may be to heal someone else. I think it has been too long. Tough times don't last, Nick. Tough people do. You really need to stop reading Hallmark cards. Ugh. Reverend Morrison smiles as he runs down the stairs towards his car. And be nice to that trainee of yours. I think it's going to be good for you. Interior Billy's home. Brad's room later. Brad sits on his bed, fidgeting with a Rubik's Cube. Billy stands in the doorway. Still haven't figured it out? Brad violently throws the toy across the room. I guess that's one way. Billy enters and sits next to Brad on the bed. You said things would be different. No, I didn't. I never said that, Brad. I said things would be better. Well, they aren't. You have to have patience. We've only been here for a couple of days. You can't expect change to happen overnight. Silence. I'm sorry. I still hurt too. I can't remember her voice. Billy pats his son's leg as he stands. He stops in the doorway. Come on down to dinner. Leftovers? Your mom's favorite. They share a smile. Brad turns off the light and follows his dad downstairs. And reading. All right. So, wow, we definitely went into quite a different style of scene structure and definitely a different dynamic for this excerpt of the script. It's actually a really nice change of pace. So if you've been reading along with the previous excerpts, most of them have all relied primarily on horror and thriller to further like the suspense and the tension. This is probably the first time in the script. Well, we're about 25 to 30 in, which means, right, we're about anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes into the film. And right now we're just starting to deal with some more deeper character development. I think I was like, I don't know why I misread this. I don't know why I kept thinking Brad and Billy. I'm like, wait, Billy was one of the main characters. So I think what I liked that you're doing, so we clearly have character development for both Billy and Nick, right? And they're two very different things. We're doing the character development for Billy. Billy's very clearly the more of the upbeat characters. I think structurally, both the scenes work. I actually have no problem with the structure. I think my recommendations is focusing more on the character development for the dramatic arcs that both of them are dealing with. Right now, for both the Billy scene and the Nick scene, it kind of feels like it's almost like touching the surface, but I want it to go just a little deeper because I don't really feel like I'm not feeling like the pain that both of them are experiencing with Bill, and it's for two completely different reasons for each scene. And by the way, like keep the overall flow of the scenes the same. I think the flow does work. I think it's just more in the dialogue, what they're saying and how they're saying it. So the first one really focuses on Billy. The beginning part is funny. Like that's funny. Because essentially you're touching upon, right, sweet old neighbor who's the serial killer, which is perfect. No problems. It was like this thing with Billy, actually, I'm starting to miss desk work. It's an iceberg to clear my mind. And like this part, like I don't even know if I would like need that in all honesty. I think I would probably just cut that. This would just be cutting some words on wordiness. Read my butt off. Yeah, because it's kind of clear, right? And I like this, right? You want the two kids to be like kind of looking up at him. They're sitting silent, and it's like you're doing a good job. Like once again, the overall scene, you just have these two kids sitting like silently doing nothing at an empty dinner table. I would almost challenge, is that like normal for two young boys? I mean, like, okay, they lost their mom. I'm pretty sure like it was the mom that they lost. But still, wouldn't like young teenager, wouldn't they still be trying to do something to distract themselves? Like, wouldn't like one be playing like a video game, or even if they're like, are they just watching the rain? It's hard to say, but just something to think about. this couple, and this is good because we're kind of touching upon this. This is kind of just recapping it, but it's fine. This is funny. The mom thing is funny. Like, that's clever. I like that. They put the loaf of bread back in the fridge and this boy's just staring at him. Yeah, so this is good because this is like the tension is here, and I'm actually fine with this opening setup because Billy's emotional arc is actually in the scene with the son, and I think that's where we need the adjustment. Let's. Okay, and then let's see, Billy. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm fine with this whole first thing. Billy heads upstairs as Eric pulls a ball of tin foil from the freezer and begins to unwrap it. I love it. This is the first moment in this scene where I feel like I get a personality from either of the boys, which I absolutely love. I don't actually think that Billy needs the personality till the next scene, so I'm actually fine with this. My question is actually, why isn't Eric already wearing the tinfoil hat? I would almost recommend Eric sitting at the table with the tinfoil hat. I don't, Sean, you've probably seen this movie. You've probably seen Signs before, but like the way that they use the tinfoil hat in that movie with the kids, that gives me like the same type of vibe. I would do the same thing with the tinfoil hat. It gives it that kind of like childish, yet kind of like supernatural-esque feel. I think that would add to the kind of suspense of this moment, even if it is a low-end dramatic moment and not too much is happening. Then the church, front steps of the church, he watches. Let's see, I should pull this up. I don't actually need this. So he stands on the front steps of the church, watches. Okay, so this is the scene after the church scene that we just had. The church scene itself was actually pretty funny. So I'm actually fine with us having this dramatic scene here because it balances out the comedic elements that we had from the previous scene. I just don't think it's for me or ever, you know, each other. Oh. I think what I would do, so like right now what's happening is it kind of feels like I feel like I'm kind of missing Nick's personality that we've gotten used to, his kind of rough demeanor. Now that's all right because Reverend Morrison is kind of like the friend character. But I think for Nick, I want to see a little bit more of the venom, especially if Reverend Morrison is saying like he only saw his like kind side come out a little bit during the meeting. So I still might add a little bit more venom from Nick. And then have it be intentional when he drops his guard down when Reverend Morrison mentions the Elizabeth. And for this portion, I would actually cut this down to just cut it down to what's the one dramatic thing that we're dealing with. Because right now it feels like you're trying to tell the audience what Nick is dealing with. And it's just a little too much. I would just say, one of the times I've noticed one of the kindest men I've ever met become one of the most bitter. Bitter at the marriage that didn't work out. A marriage fought for until the end, not to mention the loss of your friend. I think I would do it like this. Bitter at a marriage that didn't work out, not to mention the loss of your friend. Or I would almost like, unless you have to talk about the marriage right now, I would almost change this to talk like I would reword this, but I would change it to talking about the loss of the friend because that's kind of what the dramatic arc is. It sounds like that Nick's journey is it sounds like the loss of the friend is actually the surface level problem, which like that's horrible, but it sounds like the deeper problem for him is the stability in the marriage. So I would say I would kind of use this scene as subtext for his marriage, for the whatever he lost with the wife, whether or not she's still alive or whatever's going on. Yeah, and I think this would be like an excellent opportunity. I don't know that, but he has been missing for a while. At some point, you may have to. And then I could see Nick interjecting here and being like, he's still alive, God damn it. Something like very like Nick, right? Nick. God damn it. Or even something like more subtextual, like, don't you say it. Don't you say that. Something. Play around with something, but I could see kind of Nick interjecting here. And then you have the father, then you have Rev Morrison kind of continuing on here, right? Because he's just a friend, right? Nick still, even though they're close, Nick's still going to respond because Nick still feels the loss of his friend. He knows that his friend's gone if it's been a while, but he's not going to say it out loud. He's probably still in the denial stage. So I think what would be important is recognizing for Nick what stage of grief he is currently in for each problem that he's dealing with. With the friend, what stage of grief is he in? It sounds like he's in the stage of denial. Is this scene moving him along from denial to acceptance? I don't think so. I would just say make sure if you're not familiar with stages of grief, just Google it. Usually characters follow that, or we as people follow the stages of grief. So I would say that's always a good, I like to use that as a good reminder, especially for character development. I'm not as strong as you think. You're wrong. I could almost see, and Nick's an alcoholic. I could almost see like Nick kind of like pulling out like a thing of alcohol now, like pulling out like a canteen. That kind of seems like a moment of Reverend Morrison, like Nick maybe almost connecting for a moment, and then Nick kind of saying like, fuck this, alcohol. It's kind of like this vision I get, especially if it's like this rainy scene. It's right outside their the meeting place. I'll just eat away at you into the shop. And like this stuff is a little too much telling. Oh, I'll just eat it. I saw him poke his head out. I would almost say that like you could just do this, right? Because this is just gets to the point. I want to see the old Nick come back to life. I saw it and like I think I would do this, and this would just make it a little clearer. I want to see the old Nick come back to the living. I saw him poke his head out a little tonight. I don't know. I do, and this is just formatting on my end. And that's fine, right? So like I think this, and then even this, I don't even think that you need this last beat with Morrison. Right. So this probably just changed because of the formatting that I'm using, and I know this is the Morrison line. So this new training, I think this is fine. I think you could actually end the beat on here. I don't know. And even like instead of beat, having like him like maybe like punching him like playfully or like reassuringly like in the shoulder or whatever he does. I think that would be a little stronger than just saying beat. He punches him in the shoulder as the rain continues to beat down on them. So this new trainee, he can't be that bad. This talks about the trainee, which is Billy, which is good. One who want to talk to. I hate him already. This is funny. He would be just what you need. Fine, that's what. So you know what they say when two people tell you something. This is funny. This is good. Yep, and then this is kind of talking back about the family. And I like this last moment. I feel like I might recommend like cutting down this, cutting out one or two of the dialogues on this last section. Like this is cute. I like that. I think, and like this is good too. Like these are good. I think I would cut out. I think I would minimize some of this down to 2 lines. The Garcia family comment, cut it down to 2 lines. I don't think this extra stuff's necessary. Cut it down to 2 lines. Get to the tough times don't last. That's cute. The Hallmark cards thing is funny. And then be nice to the trainee. That's cute. I would go like that, and it would just cut it down a little bit. And then Billy's. So this is the same thing with Billy with the Billy scene. So I haven't figured it out. I think what would happen, so with the Billy and Brad scene, I feel like it's kind of like touching the surface. I would take it a notch deeper. Now I know this is we're not super far into the script yet, so you don't have to do like the full climax, but I think I kind of want to I want a little more emotion. Right now we're getting the emotion from Brad, which is fine because technically as a character, Brad's an extension of Billy's character journey. And I would like give a little bit more description maybe on but dialogue on how does Brad, what are the things that Brad does remember? Or maybe he says he can't remember her voice. And Billy is like, this seems like the moment where Billy would talk about one of his favorite memories of his wife, right? Brad's like, I can't remember her voice. So if his son can't remember the voice, wouldn't Billy want to remind him of one of a beautiful moment of his wife and his mom? That kind of seems like there's that opportunity. And then Billy maybe almost breaking down and kind of holding himself back for his son. This kind of seems like the moment. I mean, you could easily do that through another one or two things of dialogue, and it would make this scene, it would make it punch a little more. Yeah, that's all that I got. I love that you're doing the dramatic arc of this because this really gets into the core element of the characters. And I think overall the excerpt just needs some adjusting and some fine tuning. Absolutely. Really good excerpt. I always love when I get to dig into the character development. And I get to dig into I love when I get to dig into the character development of these stories because it's the character moments that we resonate with, right? It's the combination of the fun times and the tough times, the sad times and the surprising times. Oh, I love character journeys. So Sean, thanks again for sending that excerpt over. I appreciate you. You're probably watching this on the replay. Just let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else that you want me to touch upon with that excerpt. But overall, really great work. I'm already super engaged in your script, eager to see it come to the screen. Let me touch upon, it goes from talking to, yeah, John. So this is actually a good call out for just dialogue in general. You said I always have to be mindful if the character is the type of person to use contractions or proper English. Absolutely. And when we're developing our characters and we're trying to really understand dialogue, some people speak in contractions, some people speak in proper English. I think that just comes down to understanding the type of character that you're creating for your story. Like Nick says, I don't know. I think he probably would. I think, Sean, this is a good call out. John was mentioning some of his dialogue from the Nick scene. I think that just what we're missing is we're kind of missing Nick's flair, upset personality that we got so used to in the first couple scenes because you're trying to make it dramatic. But I would keep his personality the same and then just have you show his nice side in one or two bits of dialogue. Absolutely agree. All right. Beautiful. Onwards and upwards. So let's see. That's going to bring us on to reading number 4. John, I actually got your story here on deck. We got Spotlighting Deer by John Stephenson IV. So I got you on deck. Let me pull up your story. Let's see. So let me close this out, reset to my stuff, and pull up. Okay, so I am all set on my end. John, I got your story here. Excellent. Wonderful. And by the way, if you're just hopping into this stream, welcome to the Story and Critique Show. This is the weekly segment where I do live readings and critiques of your stories. Whether you're a beginner writer who's just wrote like their first excerpt, or whether you're a published author who's written many and you just want to hear it read aloud, I got you covered. I do all ranges of writing, from fantasy to horror. I do different styles of formats, from screenplays like we just did to short stories. Eager to hopefully have a graphic novel submitted at some point, but I do it all because to me, it's more about the character journey and storytelling as a heart. That doesn't change across different styles, across different genres. What changes in different genres is the way we tell the story. What changes from a romance to horror is the style and the word choice that we tell the story, but at the heart, we're still following character journeys. So I'm generally able to touch upon different genres. So definitely feel free to send an excerpt. Let me send that. And make sure that if you want a reading of your story, you send it to thecreativeghostwriter@gmail.com. All right. And John, I got your story all set up. Let's see. You said this will be the first online reading of this work that I wrote 5 days ago. Wonderful. Thank you for bringing it. I'm eager to get into it. All right. And all right. So we got Spotlighting Dia. Okay. Let's make sure that I'm good. Okay. Spotlighting Deer. My house was at the furthest end of the bus run. It was around 4:30 when the county school bus pulled up at my drive. I got out and started walking the quarter-mile driveway to the half-acre patch of trees that hid our house. Roscoe was at the tree line waiting for me. He began to hop up and down in the shade as I neared. For another 50 yards, the untrained German Shepherd jumped on me repeatedly, all the way up to my home. He even jumped on my back when I opened the front door at the top of the steps. When I walked inside my house, my mother was in the kitchen. So I put my book bag down at the bottom of the stairs. She walked in the living room and looked at me. Go on and put your book bag upstairs, Paul. I shouldered it again and ran up the stairs. After putting the book bag in my room, I went back down and cooked some eggs and washed them down with several large glasses of milk. I knew the rules. Always leave enough milk for breakfast. My mother knew the rules. Always buy a gallon of milk every day. I walked past her in the living room to my father's office to play video games after I'd finished my snack. She saw the dirt on the back of my shirt. How did you get that dirt on the back of your shirt? She asked me in a nagging tone. It's that stupid dog again. He always jumps on me when I get near the trees. I keep pushing him off, but he won't quit. I don't want to hurt him. I thought German Shepherds were supposed to be smart. They are some of the smartest dogs in the world. I almost had my father's office door closed to play video games when she called out, "You have to do your homework first." I only had a few chapters left to read of The Lord of the Flies, but I could do that later with a flashlight under my sheets. I don't have any tonight, Mom, I told her. She looked at me skeptically as I walked in my father's office to play Nintendo. I always got good grades, so she didn't really care. I zoned out playing video games for another 4 hours. I heard my mother walking around the living room and kitchen and up and down the stairs a few times. Thankfully, she never came in. It was dark, and at harvest time, my father always came home past 8:30. My mother cut the front porch light on for him shortly after dark. I began to wrap up my game session before I knew he'd arrive. For the rest of the time before he got home, I played The Legend of Zelda, trying to get into the mountain area at the top of the map. For some reason, no matter where I went, left, right, or up, I could never escape that screen unless I went back down. At around 8:40 or 8:45, my father's truck lights turned in our long lane. My father pulled his truck into the spot beside my mother's Civic. I stood up and turned the video game off and looked out the window. He looked at me, dog jumping on him as he made his way to the back door. My father shook his head and gritted his teeth as he repeatedly tried to fend off our dog. He leaned down the next time the dog lunged at him and pushed Roscoe off him hard, hand at the dog's neck, so hard that Roscoe squelched a little in his throat. The dog flew backwards, flipping in the air, and fell on his side. I quickly made my way to the top of the steps and in my bedroom. My father breathed out a violent sigh as he walked in our back door. I'd long known how to tell what kind of mood he was in every evening by how he exasperated when he came in our house. At harvest times, his moods were the worst. Come a few months, things would get better when he had less work to do. In the winter, he was going to teach me how to hunt deer. He normally was in an all right mood in the winter, until tax time, that was. I sat on the bed in my bedroom and opened up the required reading of my English class. All I had to do this evening was read the last few chapters. The book, The Lord of the Flies, annoyed me in parts in the beginning, but now it was getting good. Piggy only had one lens left in his glasses, and Jack always needed them to start a fire with the sun. Things in the book were getting intense, and I was glad. Paul, my father called from the bottom of the steps. I closed the book and put it at my feet for later. I kind of liked it for a novel a teacher made me read, and I was extra glad it was short. I walked out of the door of my room and leaned over the railing, looking down at the steps beneath me to not have to look into my father's eyes. He didn't speak, so I glanced up before he yelled at me to look in his eyes. I could tell he was mad. Let's go out and spotlight deer, he said. I looked up and grinned. I liked holding the light for my father while he called deer. He was a good shot with his .30-06. I ran down the steps and into his office and unplugged the spotlight charging by the door. He was already outside. I ran outside and passed him with my spotlight and got in his Ford. My father opened up the driver's side. The rifle was sitting in the middle of the cab, barrel pointed in the passenger side at my feet. He grabbed the butt of the rifle and pulled it out and shut the truck door. I was sitting in the passenger seat with my door closed. My father leaned in the window glass and yelled at me, "We're spotlighting deer here tonight." As I stepped outside his F-250 diesel, Roscoe ran up at us from out of the darkness and jumped on me and my father a few times. My father held the butt of the rifle in front of him and jabbed the German Shepherd away. Roscoe liked to sniff and chase animals around at night and must have heard the truck door close to come running our way. We walked over to the side of our house by the shed, facing a shallow place in the field between the patch of trees of our house and the ones on our neighbor's land. Few deers were ever out in this part of the field. I also wondered why we were spotlighting deer on foot. My father went over to a small pickup truck, parked at the field's edge, and leaned on it, pointing his gun out in front of him. He shucked the bolt back and spread out his legs to steady his aim. "Shine out there by the hedgerow, where I'm pointing." I did as he asked. I flipped the switch up on the spotlight and shone it into the field. Roscoe lit out in the peanut field in front of us and pranced around. I shined all the way to the right by the shed and all the way to the left to the road and beyond, but there was no deer. I lowered my light and pointed it at my feet and looked over at my father, ready to cut it off. "No, wait," he said. "Shine it out there again." I shined it out again into the field, like you told me to, scanning to the left and the right a few more times, but there still wasn't any deer. Roscoe did some figure eights and donuts in front of us, having fun running in and out of the light. "Hold it right there at the tree, directly in front of you." I did as he asked again, this time when Roscoe entered the light frame. Pow! Our German Shepherd keeled over and laid in the field, shot. I didn't say a thing. I looked at my father, unsure as to what to do with the light. He began to walk out to our dog in the field in silence. I didn't say a thing, but my instincts told me that he was walking out to check on the dog and needed my light to help him see. I shined it about 30 yards in front of us, so the bright spotlight hitting at the ground beneath us didn't make us blind. When we walked up to Roscoe, he was dead and still. I shined my light as good as I could at the situation without blinding my father too bad. He drugged the dog out of the field and into the hedgerow. A large blood spot pooled underneath our dead dog. A 10-yard blood path flowed from the animal and onto the field as my father dragged Roscoe behind him. I was thankful my father didn't flip the dog over because I'd seen many exit wounds from a 30-06. I kept the light pointed out at the pool of blood. When my father came out of the hedgerow, he walked around the pool to keep from getting any on his work boots. Turn off that light, son. I lowered the light, still shining by my side. I looked at him for a second. When I saw his head turn towards me, I flicked the thumb switch down to turn the light off. We were back at the edge of the woods by our house when my vision returned. My father put his gun away and stood outside his truck, with his head down and hands spread in, his face peeking at me every now and then through his fingers. I stood beside him, body facing the house so I wouldn't stare. What have I done? I killed your mother's dog. I killed your mother's dog. I turned my head to glance at him and then quickly back at the house. Beth's gonna kill me. I accidentally shot the dog. He began to whimper and slowly made his way to the back door of our home. By the time he was at the steps, he was in tears. He walked inside. I followed him. He turned left into the kitchen, crying. I went straight ahead into his office and plugged the spotlight back in. I had heard him whimpering through the other side of the living room door. Beth, Paul and I were out spotlighting a deer, and I accidentally shot Roscoe. I stared at the area rug beneath my feet. I could hear through the door my father wailing audible cries with real tears. I paced from side to side in my father's office. Supper was ready and waiting in the kitchen, but I'd already eaten eggs. I opened the door to make my way up to my room. My father was sobbing, shaking his head back and forth into my mother's breasts, her t-shirt soaking his tears. She cradled both of her hands on the back of his head as he cried into her chest like a baby. Shh, shh, honey, it was an accident. I know, I forgive you. I gingerly made my way up the steps to go to my room, a little hungry, but I would eat eggs again the next morning. As I neared the spot where if I went up anymore I couldn't see down, I stopped to take in the scene. My mother rocked my father's head into her as she shushed him, father sputtering into her chest. He must have heard me stop on the steps midway and knew I was staring. He lifted his head up for my mother and shot me an evil glare. I ran the rest of the 4 or 5 steps up to my room and under the sheets. I reached in the drawer beside me for a flashlight and leaned down at the foot of the bed for my book. After I cut the room light off, I could see one of the shadow ghosts that sometimes joined me in the corner of the room by my dresser. I'd complained about them before to my parents ever since I could remember, so I knew they weren't real. I lifted my flashlight and pointed it and thumbed the switch. The light always made them go away, and that's how I knew they weren't real. I pulled the covers over my head and began to do my homework. The end of the Lord of the Flies was good. Jack's clan killed Piggy and took his glasses and chased Ralph through the woods, aiming to kill him too. At the end, Ralph got saved by a sailor at the edge of the beach. I didn't understand what the book meant yet, but I was going to have to figure it out by Friday if I wanted an A. I didn't really care about A's, but that was expected of me. I turned my flashlight off and looked around the room. The shadow ghost was in the other corner this time. I pressed the light switch on the lamp beside me. The light always made me disappear, just as my parents always told me until I was 10 and stopped talking about shadows. Ghosts aren't real. I put my flashlight away, turned the lamp off, and stared up at the ceiling and thought about nothing to go to sleep. I was good at that. In no time, I was sleeping like a baby. Oof, and excerpt. Wow, that was intense. Aw, the German Shepherd. You didn't give the German Shepherd too much of a person. You kind of did. Aw, nobody likes to see a dog killed off. I had a gut feeling that something like that was going to happen, but just like the intentionality behind it was like, aw. The German Shepherd. It's so sad. So sad. It was definitely emotionally impactful. Spotlighting deer. It was almost like I was expecting something to go wrong with the deer, but yeah, really good story, John. This is a really good story. I think it's definitely very emotionally impactful with the key moment. I think right now, Actually, so first off, I have to commend you. It's very well written. As an overall story, this is a very well written piece. And I think that's absolutely one of your strengths. I feel great about the structure. I feel very good about the overall world. The interiority behind your protagonist is very clear. I feel like I'm in the mind of a child. And that's perfect. That's where we want to be. I feel his fear. I definitely know where I feel the emotions that he's going through. I think there's a couple moments where you could probably not exaggerate, but you could probably pull it out even more so. Let's see, this will be the first online 20 hours of editing. Okay, that makes sense. So you've taken it through a very lengthy editing process. That makes sense why it feels it's definitely ready. This is definitely something you could submit to a contest, or you could submit to like a magazine. This would definitely be a heartfelt story. I think if I was going to find places to work on, there was just a couple. I just highlighted a couple areas. For another 50 yards, the untrained German Shepherd jumped on me repeatedly, all the way up to for another 50 yards, the untrained German Shepherd jumped on me repeatedly, all the way up to my house. I was like thinking of like logistically if that made sense to me, and I think it does. For another 50 yards, the untrained German Shepherd jumped on me repeatedly, all the way up to my home. I think, John, if you okay, so this is just a couple of few subjective suggestions to elevate the emotional turmoil of the story. So we really want to feel the dog. We really want to feel the dog's death. I would give the German Shepherd a name first off, because we really want to, even if the character doesn't call him it, I think it would also be beneficial for the mom to have an interaction with the dog. Because especially since it's the mom's dog, right? Since it's Beth's dog, I think that would prove very beneficial in this early moment for even the mom. Like, even though the dog's like annoying the kid, the dog like jumps up at the mom and the mom loves it and the mom's laughing. I think by having that connection with the dog and the mom very early on, even if it's brief, right? I think it doesn't need anything more than like a paragraph. I think it would make us feel even more when the dog gets killed later on. So I think that would definitely elevate it. All of this stuff, like the setup, it works. You're kind of just setting him up as like a normal kid. I like absolutely loved, and it's so ironic that the story touches on Lord of the Flies, and I was like just talking about that. There's such an irony there, John. We're like on the same wavelength. That's incredible. Let's see, and some of the commentary. Yeah, so Maammy Telly actually touched upon something as well, which I was going to touch upon, John. When the dog dies, I don't get any type of reaction from the kid. And I think this is the one thing, I think the dog death scene, like we'll go to that because that's actually like one of the biggest moments in the piece. The death scene of the dog, like right now, when I think about your main character, the things that I know about him is he's a kid. He wants to play video games and he has to do homework, but he's kind of like in Lord of the Flies. He's terrified of his dad. That's clear. He's scared of his dad. You could tell his dad's probably abusive. But I don't get how the kid feels about the dog's death. He's kind of annoyed about the dog in the beginning, but I don't really get his like emotional impact. Like whether or not he loves the dog or hates the dog, seeing the dog killed in front of you, even and you know it's intentional, would probably create fear. Well, it would probably create sadness and fear of the dad. Like, so I think that would be a good. Maammy Teller brought up a good point. You can delete the 50 yards in the beginning, and it might prove the same thing. That's a good call out. Let's see. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So that was the intentional, right? So Okay, so the goal of it is that because the kid is so desensitized that he doesn't, basically the dog's death does nothing to him. And like that's fine, right? So if that's the intention, if if the kid's emotional response is neutral because he's desensitized, do that. But right now even that's not clear. So in things with ways to make that clear, like during the dog death scene, of like, what if like the kid like flashes out and he thinks back to like, oh, the time that the dad did this, or the time the dad did this, or the time the dad did this, and then the dad's screaming back at him to go help him, right? So we need some type of connection that the kid's been that desensitized. You touch upon his fear and his anger of the dad, like that's clear. But in terms of that dog moment, the moment of the death, right now it's not clear that his response is desensitization. So that I would just say make that a little clear. You could go upon that in any number of ways. If I were to be editing and working on this, I would probably call out a couple like specific times the kid's been abused by the dad. That's what I would personally do. I don't, a flashback would pull it out. I don't think flashback is necessarily, but at heart, the story is about the characters, the kid's fear. It's really about the kid's relationship with his dad. And then Lord of the Flies is really a reference. Lord of the Flies is kind of an undertone of Lord of the Flies is a thematic undertone, right? Of how kids act, or how kids devolve when there's no parental structure. I almost think that there should be some sort of tie-in between him having almost like a de-evolution moment in that moment, tied in with Lord of the Flies. Like, what if like when the dog's killed off, like he thinks back to like the moment that like Piggy is killed, right? Just because it's fresh on his mind. You touch upon video games and Legend of Zelda, which Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I love, but that's a little less relevant to this story. So I think if you can tie that moment maybe into either a father abuse scene or maybe Lord of the Flies, which that would actually work, I think it would make his emotional impact a little stronger. Yeah, and I think that works well. Like, I think you reference it, but I think the dog death scene, you got to do something that's a little bit more direct, or you got to do something that gives us a better indication of how of why the kid is responding with basically doing nothing. Because right now it just comes across that the kid doesn't care. Right. And that's not what it is. It's just the kid's desensitized. So it just has to be made clear. But yeah, I definitely like the references. I can tell through the lead up to introducing the father and then in the post scene that you're really wanting it to keep everything subtextual. And you're wanting to do a lot more showing and very little telling. And I think that's to be commended. But I think you have to actually up the telling a little bit. Otherwise, right now it comes across too vague potentially. So, but absolutely great use of showing. Absolutely. And I think that's another reason that the piece comes along well, because it's like 70, 80% showing. The dog death scene was sad. I was like, I feel like I was more sad. I was sad. Anybody who reads the dog death scene, and I think, John, something else to keep in mind is whenever an animal is killed off, readers, we as people, get almost more sad when an animal is killed off than when a human's killed off, because we place love in animals. So because readers care so much about animals, if I love a dog, or especially if I'm a dog person and a dog's killed off and I'm not seeing some type of reaction, I'm not going to believe the character's real unless it's kind of set up that there's desensitization. Because even with like the fact that he's been abused, you talk about how he's angry. You talked about how it's clear that the character can tell when the dad's in a bad mood during certain times of the season. But right now, I don't know what type of anger that means.
You reference the anger, but I don't know like what type of angry the dad is until the killing of the dog. Right now, in terms of is the dad the type of angry guy who's going to come down and like smack the shit out of his son? Is he the type he's going to like take a belt to him? Is this the type who's going to have him sleep outside by himself? Is he the type who's going to have them kick him out of the house? Right now, the type of angry and the type of abuse just isn't clear, right? So because of that, as a reader, we're not able to be clear on the type of desensitization that the main character is. So I think that's really the only opportunity, just clarifying that, because the overall character journey, it's the fear is clear, right? It's clear. The dynamic is clear, but I think I just need a little bit more subtext or context on more about that dynamic. And so I appreciate your criticism, but I'm thinking this is literary fiction, and the vagueness are what can make a short story compelling. And John, like, so you bring up a really good point, and this is actually something that I love to tell all writers, right? So criticism and feedback is entirely subjective experience. So when you bring your story to an editor, or when you bring your story to an alpha reader or beta reader, it's at the end of the day, it's your story, and you should always do what's best for your story. When you get feedback from an editor, you should always pick and choose the things that you like and the things that you don't like. Don't take everything that editors or critics or readers have to say unless you absolutely agree with everything. Now, if you give out a story to multiple people and you're getting the same exact feedback from every person, then that's a different sign, right? Then that's a different, like, okay, well, if I'm getting the same type of criticism, maybe there's something to be adjusted. But I think it's always a balance. So absolutely commend you with that, John. And I actually think it's really cool that you're going to submit it to the Raymond Carver Short Story Prize. Let us know how it does. I'm like, if the story wins because of the vagueness, like, good for you, right? Because I'm thinking, like, I tend to come from more of like a fantasy background, so I like that. I need that description. So I'm actually not surprised. If I think of like the type of short story, I generally don't tend to be as targeted. I don't read as many of this style of nonfiction short story, so I'm not even the intended audience for this. So I think that's absolutely important to say. Sometimes the things that make a short story compelling are the questions it doesn't answer. There's truth to that. There absolutely is. Good for you, man. I know a lot of times with story critiques, we have to, you could call it thick skin. I think it's just we have to be clear on what our intentions are with critiques, with workshops, with feedback. If we're not clear with our intention, the only times we get our feelings hurt or we feel bad is when we weren't clear with ourselves. So that's a really good call out. But overall, good story. Good luck with submitting it. I'm very eager to see if how others receive it. I hope you win the prize, my man. Awesome. And that's all that I got for you. I'm like so sad about like the German Shepherd. I'm just like sad about the German Shepherd dog death now. I love the Lord of the Flies reference. I absolutely love that. I love the Legend of Zelda. Absolutely. I thought that was fun. All right. So let me hop right along. Thanks for sharing that, John. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely really polished. So I could tell that as a polished piece, it could work. It's definitely polished enough to be submitted. Okay. So reading number 5, Maammy Telly. I actually got your story on deck. Maammy Telly, got your story on deck. And while I'm pulling that up, if you found any value from this live stream, make sure to follow and subscribe. I do these live streams every single day, writing sprints during the week, writing a group during the week. Saturday is the story critique show, and then Sunday is the Creative Right Now podcast. So make sure that if you're subscribed, you'll be alerted when I go live.
Beautiful. And let me pull up your story. Okay. All right, Maammy, Telly. And I know you're here in the chat. I just saw you comment. Okay. So we got another one. And I'm pretty sure, Maammy, Telly, when you sent this to me, you said this was based off another free write that we did. All right. I have to, for some reason, I did not save that free write picture. I think it was one of the first ones we did a couple weeks back. Trying to see if I can find the picture real fast. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure if it's going to let me pull up that picture. Yeah, bummer. Okay. Yeah, unable to load. Weird. Okay. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's gonna let me pull up that picture, but I'm pretty sure this was based off a free write. Yeah, the guy with the glowing crystal. Yep. So we did a free write a couple weeks back. It's basically I want to say it was like a wizard looking character that had there's this glowing object before him. Yeah, this is a cool free write. So I'm really eager. Thanks for sending this over. Absolutely. I love when we can do these free writes and then we can kind of dig into what the free write looks like, what you ended up coming up with. Okay, so crystals. All right, so let me pull this up. All right, Maammy, Telly. So let's see what we got. 20 minutes on the clock. Crystals. Chapter 1. Their father, Garrick, had been killed just after Jasper and Danessa were born. No one would say how. Their mother would only say he was a good man and very brave. Now, just 7 years later, their mother, Joanna, lay dying of yellow lung. She coughed into a rag as her sister put a cool cloth on her forehead. Gwen, I must tell you, she coughed again. The children, they must know. She struggled to breathe. They must be told. Yes, Joanna, I promise I will take care of them. You must be still. No, the crystals, they must have them. Again, she coughed and strained to continue. The children, they must know who they are. Gwen sat up with a gasp and violently shook her head. No, we swore never to tell them. Their lives would be in danger if anyone knew the truth. Joanna was adamant. Her breathing became even more labored. It's for their own good. You know, as I do, that one day we will need them to survive. When the time comes, they must be told. She was coughing so hard, the rag became tinged with blood. She rasped out, "Promise me." With her bony fingers, she grabbed Gwen's shirt. "Promise me." I promise, Joanna. Now lie back down. Gwen looked Joanna in her eyes. "I promise." Joanna took one ragged breath, then nothing. She was gone.
When the time did come, Gwen kept her promise. Jasper and Danessa were 11 years old, and she called them to sit with her in the garden. She told them how special they were and what their heritage truly was. We come from a long line of magic. The children stared wide-eyed. Danessa and Jasper started questioning at the same time. Magic? Real magic? Like spells and charms? And Gwen smiled. Well, something like that. Have you ever felt good or bad about something and perhaps knew what would happen before it happened? Danessa nodded, but Jasper had to think about it. Then he softly admitted it also. Gwen nodded. Gwen showed them the crystals and told them how to use them, how they could use them to communicate with each other over long distances. And, if necessary, they could call on the old magic to help them, but to use them with the utmost care. For every use of good magic, there is a potential for bad. You must consider the cost of using magic, she warned. She explained the energy cycle, how the orbs could be a source of energy, and how they needed to receive energy. These were their mother's last gift to them. How come you are telling us now about all this? Jasper asked. My time will be ending, and I have a promise to keep. Are you ill? Janessa gasped. No, children, I have a few years yet, and you need some training. She then warned them to let no one ever find out about them. Our kind has been hunted, kidnapped, and tortured for our power. So few of us are left. Many thought we had died out entirely, but they are wrong. There still is a scattering of us who know the old ways. Some work as healers, for the use of herb lore is still approved in smaller communities, but any practice using the crystals or using sight must be done in absolute secrecy. Just 2 months after their 14th birthday, their Aunt Gwen passed away. Her heart had given out, and not even the crystals could help. Left on their own, Jasper and Danessa had only each other. There was very little money left. Too young to find work to support themselves, they did whatever was necessary. They found the urchins, or maybe it was the urchins who found them. They were wary at first, but soon accepted them into their world of petty theft and secret hiding places. One day, Danessa almost dropped her orb in front of one of the urchins. Hey, what's that? Mole asked. Danessa said, it's just an old ball of glass. It makes things look funny. That's all I have from my home. Let me see it! Mole made a grab for it. No! Danessa pulled it away. You'll break it. Won't, said Mole. It's mine, and I don't want anyone else to touch it, Danessa insisted. Oh, just keep your old glass ball. Mole got up and left. Jasper had seen some of what happened. Dee, you have to be more careful. Yes, I know. It won't happen again. She tucked the orb in her jacket, and no one but her brother saw her eyes glisten. See that it doesn't, Jasper traded. He put his hand on her shoulder, just enough to reassure her he wasn't really mad, but enough to remind her just how serious it could be. Come on, let's go see what there is left to eat. For 3 years, Jasper's and Danessa's secret was kept. Or so they thought. Dun, dun, dun. That's actually a good cliffhanger. That's a really good cliffhanger. This feels like the next chapter. This feels like a chapter break, actually. Like we're about to be like, oh, Mole's kind of an annoying character. I was like, what's Mole going to do? and reading. I'm gonna tell you, thanks for sending that. That's actually really cool. That's cool that you have from the free write, from that image, you've kind of fleshed out like this fantasy world, and I'm actually very, very intrigued. I love that you've set up the core of these characters. So you have Janessa and then who is Jasper? So Jasper and Danessa, right? The two characters, Jasper and Danessa, and they're the two kids. I love how you've set them up, and I love that you set this up as a prologue. What I would actually do, and this is just a random formatting thing. Let me pull this up. I don't need that. So as a random formatting thing, what I would do is I would actually make the last couple pages, Joanna, up until we get to the present moment. So I would go up until this, like and this is just if you're going to flesh this out into either like a short story or more of a feature length, I'd make that first section a prologue, because the main story sounds like it follows the characters Jasper and Danessa, and this is all good setup, but this initial thing, it feels like more of a prologue for setting up the kind of like the context. So I would actually have chapter 1 start here. Yeah, so that's if you're going to make this something longer, that's what I would do. I would have chapter 1 start here. Now, essentially, just after no one would say how. Let's see, and this could just be a formatting thing, but just make sure with a dialogue, or you always indent for that. Let's see, Gwen, I must tell you. And I think you did a good job of including the action for like her dying and her death scene, right? You could clearly tell she's trying to like cough up like these last like figments of speech before she dies. They must be told. Yes, Joanne, I promise I will take care of them. You must be still. No, the crystals, they must have them. Again, she coughed and strained to continue. The children, they must know who they are. Gwen sat up with a gasp and violently shook her head. No, we swore never to tell them. Their lives would be in danger. So I actually think there would be a really cool opportunity. So this is just an entirely subjective idea. But what if like she holds up one of the crystals in her dying breath? Like, even if like we don't actually get to know anything about the crystal, if she holds up one of them, like it's like it glows as she drops her hand and dies. Something, just some type of, that'd be kind of a cool little like visual to add to it. Gwen set up with a gasp. I swear I never tell them. Yeah, so overall, the death scene, I don't have too many issues with the scene itself. I think the only thing I'm missing from this is kind of the setup for where are they. Beyond, like, you did a good setup of their description, keeping it brief. And I mean, like, I'm assuming they're in like the mother's like bedroom on her deathbed, but I don't have any setup on like what style of world that I'm in. And I think that would be something to help. Like, we're in the year 2020, or we're in the land of Narnia. Regardless of whatever world you set us up in, I just need some type of need to be cemented in what type of world I'm in. And you could do that by being like what house they're in. And I think that would help to cement for whatever the universe is. And because this is just so early in the story, you don't have to like do too much description. I would even just add a sentence somewhere of describing like, okay, this is the house they're in, or they're located near the kingdom of whatever you want to call it, to better cement the reader. But their dialogue works. You use enough description as she's dying, which is good. You did a good job. You did a good job with balancing some of the description with the dialogue, and I liked that. And I definitely got a clear sense of like the death scene. That was really well done. Never thought of prologue, and I did think after I sent this to add a little descriptions and the crystals. Yeah. So I think that's actually what I was going to touch on for chapter 1. Or no, I'm calling it chapter 1 now, after a prologue, when the time did come. Yeah, so this is good. So I think the real thing that this scene is missing is doing a little description, which it sounds like you're aware of. I think I want a little description on what does the crystal like look like. You don't necessarily need to go into too much of its capabilities since it's so early on.
But that's entirely a subjective choice. But I think what we want to see, like specifically, what does this crystal look like? Does it look like a square like emerald? Does it look like I was like, I don't have the right descriptions for it, but I would research and get the right word choices to describe a crystal correctly. Yeah, and then for every use of good, and if necessary, they could call on the old magic to help them, but use them with the utmost care. So they can use the crystals to communicate with each other, which is cool. So you clearly, like you have a whole magic system, which is interesting, right? And like you don't even have to describe it right now, but you're touching upon it, right? So then there's a difference between a new magic and an old magic, which you get to explore throughout the story, which is fun. I think right now what we want to see, since this is just showing the kids the crystals for the first time, let's see the crystal do something, right? Let's see the crystal do something super cool right now. You could have so much fun with it, like have the crystal do something, and that way it kind of shows this like, oh, brilliant display. So we get to see something about the crystal. Let's see, and I think that would be interesting. You must consider the cost of using the magic. How the orbs can be a source. Now that, yep, these were their mother's last gift to them. Yeah. And this is good, right? That the aunt's going to be passing away. When you're touching upon herb lore, like that's interesting. So herb lore is another thing. So you've touched upon a couple points of the magic system, which I'm fascinated about. Something I would recommend. I tried a few years yet, and you need some training. I would actually hold off on introducing a specific type of magic. So you're talking about herb lore. I would actually hold off on introducing it at this time because you've already introduced to us the concept of this old magic system. So focus on the magic of the crystals so that way you can get the reader excited about this crystal magic and then touch upon herb lore like a little later, right? Like let's say like the characters have like a journal or maybe they have something left from the aunt. So that way we introduce the reader to one specific, what is the style? The style of magic is it's old magic. It uses crystals and it relies on an object to cast something. You need the energy get stored in the object. The object can then expand the energy. Which is fun. It's actually a really fun style of magic. And that way I think this would be stronger just ending off on her like warning them that they've been hunted off. Yeah, and I think that would be good. And then I think it's like that same thing with the first scene. I would say just set up the setting a little bit. Give me like one paragraph about where are they specifically. Are they in a garden? Oh, that's right. And she called them to sit with her in the garden. All right, you did do that. How special they were. So you do touch upon that they're in a garden. I think I missed that, but that is good. In the garden. Yeah, and I think right now the problem is I don't know where their house is because I didn't get set up of the type of world. So I'm just not clear what type of world they're in. Other than that, like because there's magic, I'm assuming it's a fantasy world. But I think a little more description would help cement the reader. But other than that, that's good. And then you go to this interesting scene with Danessa and Mole. I want like a sentence of description on who Mole is. Like Mole, like when you call a character Mole, I'm thinking he's probably like kind of like maybe like short, thin character, probably large glasses, looks like a mole. But give me like one line of description of what does Mole look like. And who is Mole to these? Is Mole just a random urchin? Is he a leader of the groups? Or is he's just like an annoying little, like, kind of like an annoying little brother? I kind of get the sense that he's going to be a little bit of an obstacle for them. And I think you do a good job of that. I think that's fun. You do a good job of setting that up. And you do a good job of setting up the world with the urchins. I think that's very well done. And I think here during the scene, set up where is the scene right now? I would say, like, so are they in one of the secret hiding places, or are they just like on the street? I was like, one day at the main hiding place underneath the bridge beneath the bank, or like whatever you want to do, right? I would just set up the specific area. That would just make it a little clearer. But I love the dialogue. The Mole Danessa scene works out well. It builds on her character, which is fun. And then we kind of get a little bit of Jasper because they were younger previously. So this is the first time we're interacting with them truly as slightly older characters. And you could tell Jasper's the more protective one. I think I also want to know a little bit about how Jasper and Danessa, like, what do they look like? You might have described it previously, but what makes them stand out? Is like Janessa. So Jasper and Danessa. So is Danessa like short, like 14 years old, pigtails, glasses? Is Jasper like torn jacket, torn coat, walks around, fidgety? You don't have to give a lot of description. You could always go very minimal, but I think it's important to still do something. And then this was an excellent cliffhanger. I'm like, very good job on a cliffhanger. Very good job. That's definitely building up the suspense. So yeah, I absolutely like Maammy Telly. I'm like really impressed that you came up with this much of like a fantasy story with the details that you've included in the free write. Like really great work. That was really cool. I'm like so impressed. For me, it's harder for me to come up with like fully realized worlds. I feel like I'm good at coming up with the scene, but I won't do as much of like the larger world building. So that was really cool to see. Really great work. Awesome. That's all that I got for you though. Thanks for sending that over. I wish I could have that picture because that picture was cool. I need to see if I can find it. But yeah, thanks for sending that over. That was a cool read. Awesome. Appreciate you, Mom and Telly. Okay. So with where we're at, let's see next. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to make a suggestion. So what should you watch next? We're going to hop over to a writing sprint. But before we go, I want you to check out my brand new video. So I actually just launched a brand new video like today on the Kauffman's Corner channel. I'm going to show you the thumbnail for it. Oh, that is not. My thumbnail disappeared. Okay. Hold on just a second. Okay, here we go. So I wanted to show you the thumbnail for the video. Awesome. So there's the thumbnail. Super fun. You should go check out the video. It is called, I should probably throw myself up. It is called Workshop on Writing a Magic System. Go check it out. Brand new. This is the longest video that I've done so far. The video itself, I think, is almost at 45 minutes. I wanted to play around with a different style of doing a bit more of like a deep dive of a workshop. It includes a specific 10-step strategy that I use to create and develop a fully realized system of magic for your fantasy story or in your fantasy universe. It's unique in that it's like a 10-step system never been done before. I do the process with you so you can follow it along as we do it together. And then there's also a sneak peek in there of Last Scarecrow. I include a free write in the video, and there's I work on one of the climax scenes. So there's a little spoiler if you want to go check it out in there. But definitely go check out that video next. I think it was super cool, and I hope y'all get a lot of value out of it. Okay, so with that being said, I got that out. Perfecto. And now it is time for our writing sprint. So time to get in our daily writing sprint, 20 minutes. Let's hop straight into it. Let's say if you're feeling like super creative, join me for the writing sprint. Super easy. And let's get some writing done. If you're not feeling like writing, you can sit back and listen to the music, and I'll write vicariously for the both of us. Excellent. And I got to pull up Last Scarecrow. All right. And we're going to throw up the music. Perfect. And there's a description if you want to know where I'm at in Last Scarecrow. And I'm going to hop right into it. So we got 20 minutes on the clock. It's time to write now. All right. That was a good little beat. We got the companion. Oh, no, she's gone. Okay, so that was a good little beat. Let's see, writing sprint and writing sprint. Wonderful. All right, so that was perfect. We got a good little writing sprint there. That was literally kind of just like world building for me, because this scene, like once we've left the nest, we're in the lands of the Eastern monuments, and I want the environment for this like part of the story to kind of feel creepy yet distinct, a type of territory that I haven't explored yet. So I really wanted to focus in on the description of the world. And I'm probably going to further refine this, because now they're traveling, now that they kind of have their magic carpet, now that they're traveling to the Graveyard of the Last, which has been a scene and a location that they have been traveling towards and working to locate for the better part of the last 40% of the story. So I've definitely been hyping up this locale, eager to dig into it. I'll get to explore a little bit more tomorrow, or maybe on Monday. We'll probably do a free write tomorrow. All right. So that was great. Let's see, Maammy Telly. You said you wish you could take all the credit to give credit where due. My son helped. He's very pleased. Oh, that's really sweet. Doing collaboration projects like that is always exciting, especially when you're doing it with like a family member and your writing styles, you can vibe well together. That must be a really fun thing for you and your son to do. That's really awesome. It was like, my parents aren't writers at all. not their thing. Well, my mom's a grant writer, but she's awesome. Okay. So that was great progress on our writing sprint, and we are coming to creative writing on the morrow. So join us for tomorrow's episode of the Creative Right Now podcast. I'll be bringing on published author. And so I want to make sure I don't want to mess up her last name. But I'll bring on a published author. We're going to be chatting about how do you network, connect, and meet other writers, editors, and publishers. She is extremely experienced, has over 20 published novels, and has some extremely great insight. So we're going to be digging into that on tomorrow's episode of the Creative Right Now podcast at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. So don't forget that you're subscribed, so that way you're alerted when we go live. It will be a fun podcast interview, and we're going to be doing a deep dive and a lot. We'll be doing probably another ChatGPT inspired writing sprint after. So join me. And by the way, don't forget, like the stream on your way out. Let me know that you got value out of it. We've had such a great stream today. We went through quite a number of stories. Know that you can start sending your story submission for next week. I know there was a couple that I didn't quite get to for this week. So send your story submission for next week's reading, and I'll look forward to digging into it then. But we've had some fun, writers. That's all that I got for you for today. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow.